There is a question that almost every young person asks at some point in life: what am I supposed to do with my life? Maybe you're sitting in a classroom right now, staring out the window and wondering whether anything you're learning will actually matter. Maybe you're in college, surrounded by thousands of people, yet you still have absolutely no idea what direction to take. Or maybe you've already finished your education, and now the real world is standing in front of you like a giant wall. You have dreams, you have ambitions, you want to do something big, but you don't know where to begin. And perhaps the hardest question of all is this: how do you build a life that actually matters? For Elon Musk, the answer is surprisingly simple. Don't start by asking how you can become famous. Don't start by asking how you can become powerful. Don't start by asking how you can become the leader. Start with one question: how can I be useful? That idea may sound simple, almost too simple, but if you think deeply about it, that one question can completely change the direction of your life, because the world is full of people competing to be noticed, competing to be richer, competing to have more followers. More influence, more attention, more status. But what if success isn't about being the person everyone looks at? What if real success is about becoming the person who actually makes things better? Think about the people who have changed the world. The engineers who built things that millions of people use, the teachers who changed the lives of students, the doctors who found better ways to help patients, the scientists who made discoveries, the entrepreneurs who created new opportunities, the workers who quietly show up every day and do something valuable. Many of them did not begin with the goal of becoming famous. They began by trying to solve a problem. They tried to make something work better. They tried to create something that didn't exist before. They tried to be useful, and that's where one of the most important pieces of advice for young people begins. Try to contribute more than you consume. Take a moment and think about that. Every day, we consume things. We consume food. We consume entertainment. We consume products. We consume information. We scroll through videos, posts, news, opinions, and endless streams of content. But the important question is, what are we creating? What are we adding? What becomes better because we were here? It's not necessary for everyone to invent a rocket or build a global company. Being useful does not require becoming a billionaire. It doesn't require becoming famous. You can be useful in your family. In your workplace. In your community. In your school. You can solve a problem, teach someone something. Build something, repair something, create something, make someone's work easier, give another person an opportunity. The scale can be small, but usefulness has a strange way of growing. One useful skill can lead to another. One solved problem can create a bigger opportunity. One good idea can inspire an entire team. And one person who decides to contribute instead of simply consume can eventually create something far bigger than they ever imagined. That is why the goal shouldn't simply be to have a successful career. The deeper goal should be to have a positive net contribution. To leave something better than you found it. Imagine two different approaches to life. The first person wakes up every morning asking, what can the world give me? What opportunities are available to me? What recognition can I get? How can I get ahead of everyone else? The second person wakes up and asks, what problem can I help solve? What can I learn? What can I build? How can I make this better? Which person is more likely to create something valuable? The answer is obvious. And yet, the first mindset is everywhere. We're constantly told to build our personal brand, get more attention, become an influencer, become a leader. Stand above everyone else. But there is an interesting problem with chasing leadership simply for the sake of being a leader. The people who desperately want power are not always the people best suited to use it. Sometimes the people you want to lead are the ones who never planned to become leaders at all. They're too busy working, too busy solving problems, too busy trying to make things better. And then, because of their competence and commitment, people naturally begin to follow them. That's a completely different kind of leadership. Real leadership is not always about standing in front of the crowd. Sometimes it's about carrying responsibility when nobody else wants to. Sometimes it's about doing the difficult work. Sometimes it's about admitting that you don't know the answer and then working relentlessly until you find one. For a young person, that can be incredibly liberating. You don't have to spend your life trying to become impressive. Try to become useful. The recognition may come, or it may not. But usefulness creates value whether anyone applauds you or not. And if you live a useful life, that's already something meaningful. But then comes the next question. How do you figure out what you're actually good at? How do you know which direction to take? Should you go to university? Should you teach yourself? Should you get a job immediately? Should you travel? Should you experiment with different careers? The truth is, there is no single path that works for everyone. And perhaps that's one of the biggest mistakes young people make. They think there is one perfect road, one perfect degree, one perfect job, one perfect decision. As if choosing incorrectly at 20 years old means your entire future is destroyed. But life doesn't really work that way. Asterisk, your interests change, your skills develop, the world changes, opportunities appear that didn't exist 5 years earlier. You may discover that you're talented at something you never even knew existed. But how can you discover something if you've never explored it? This is why broad learning is so powerful. Read, explore, ask questions, learn a little about many different things, because before you can decide what truly interests you, you need to understand what is actually out there. Imagine walking into the world's largest library with only one book in your hand. Would you assume that book contains the only subject worth studying? Of course not. You would look around. You would walk through the different sections. History, science, technology, psychology, business, engineering, philosophy, art, literature, mathematics. You might open a book and immediately realize it's not for you. That's fine. Put it down. Try another one. The goal isn't to become an expert in everything. The goal is to explore the landscape, because somewhere in that enormous landscape may be a subject that changes your life. Maybe you've never thought about physics, and then one day something about it captures your imagination. Maybe you read about programming and suddenly realize you love solving logical problems. Maybe you learn about design and discover that you see the world differently from other people. Maybe you meet someone working in a profession you didn't even know existed, and suddenly a new possibility appears. That's why reading is such a powerful shortcut. Through books, you can enter the minds of people who spent decades learning something. You can learn from their failures without having to make every single one yourself. You can explore hundreds of different fields without physically spending years each one. A book can introduce you to an idea in a few hours that might otherwise take you years to encounter. And sometimes, one idea is enough to change your entire direction. But reading isn't only about collecting information. Information alone is not wisdom. You can memorize thousands of facts and still not know what to do with your life. The deeper purpose is exploration. You are trying to understand the world, and at the same time, you are trying to understand yourself. What problems naturally interest you? What subjects make you lose track of time? What kind of work gives you energy instead of draining every bit of it from you? What are you naturally better at than the average person? And here's where things become interesting. Being good at something is not enough. You might be extremely talented at a particular activity and still hate doing it. Maybe everyone tells you that you're good at accounting, but the thought of spending your life doing it makes you miserable. Maybe you're good at speaking in public, but you don't enjoy being on stage. Maybe you're talented at something, but it doesn't connect with you. On the other hand, you may love doing something but have very little natural ability at first. So what should you do? The ideal situation is to search for an overlap, something you're interested in, something you're naturally capable of becoming good at, and something that can create real value. That's where things become powerful. Imagine 3 circles. The first circle is what you're good at. The second is what you enjoy. The third is what the world needs or values. Somewhere in the middle is a place worth investigating. And finding that place doesn't always happen overnight. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes you discover it through failure. You try something. It doesn't work. You try something else. That doesn't feel right either. Then another opportunity appears. And suddenly, something clicks. This is why young people should not be afraid of exploration. You don't need to have your entire life mapped out. You just need to keep learning. Keep moving, keep paying attention, and don't confuse being temporarily lost with being permanently without direction. There is a difference. Sometimes being lost is part of finding the path, but there is another mental tool that can make this process even more powerful. A way of thinking that can help you cut through confusion, assumptions, and popular opinions. A way of thinking borrowed from one of the most powerful fields of human knowledge. Physics. And this is where the conversation becomes even more interesting, because many of the biggest mistakes we make in life happen because we accept assumptions without questioning them. Someone says, "That's just how it's done," and we believe them. Someone says, "You can't start a company without a lot of money." Someone else says, "You need the perfect degree." Another person says, That industry is impossible to enter, and eventually, we stop asking whether these things are actually true. We inherit the limits of other people's thinking, but physics teaches you to look at the fundamentals, strip away the assumptions, ask what is actually true. Then build your understanding from there. Let's say someone tells you that something is impossible. Instead of immediately accepting it, ask why. What exactly makes it impossible? Is it a law of nature? Or is it simply difficult? Those are very different things. A rocket flying into space is difficult, but it isn't impossible. Building an electric car company in a world dominated by gasoline vehicles may seem nearly impossible, but nearly impossible and actually impossible are not the same thing. There is a huge difference between this has never been done before and this cannot be done. Young people should remember that the world often confuses tradition with truth. Just because something has been done the same way for a long time doesn't mean it is the best way. Sometimes, the biggest opportunities are hidden inside questions that nobody else is asking. Why does this have to be so expensive? Why does this process take so long? Why hasn't anyone improved this? What would happen if we started from the basics? These questions can change everything. And perhaps they can change your life as well. Because when you stop blindly accepting the limits around you, you begin to see possibilities. You begin to realize that many of the walls in front of you are not made of stone. They're made of assumptions, and assumptions can be challenged. But now, there's another trap waiting for every ambitious young person. Competition. The belief that for you to win, somebody else must lose, that success is a fixed pie. If someone gets a bigger slice, there must be less left for you. This is called a zero-sum mindset. And at first, it can seem perfectly logical. There are only so many jobs, only so many customers, only so much money. Only so much attention. So naturally, people begin fighting over the existing resources. But what if the pie itself can grow? What if instead of fighting over the existing opportunities, you could create new opportunities? Think about technology. Before smartphones, there were no smartphone app developers. Before the internet became widespread, there were countless businesses and careers that simply didn't exist. Before certain technologies were invented, nobody could compete for jobs in industries that had not yet been created. Human progress grows the pie. A new invention can create an entire ecosystem. A new business can create jobs. A new product can solve a problem while creating opportunities for thousands of people. And this changes the way we should think about success. Instead of asking, how do I be everyone else? Ask, how do I create more value? Instead of thinking, how do I take a bigger piece? Ask, how do I make the pie bigger? Because if you spend your entire life believing that everything is scarce, you may start seeing other people's success as a threat. Someone else gets promoted, and you're jealous. Someone starts a successful business, and you hope they fail. Someone shares an idea, and instead of learning from it, you try to tear it down. But when you understand that value can be created, something changes. Another person's success can become evidence of what's possible. Another person's achievement can inspire you. Another person's idea can lead to an idea of your own. Celebrating excellence does not make you smaller. Learning from successful people does not take away your future. In many cases, collaboration creates more opportunity than competition ever could. Imagine a group of brilliant people all trying to destroy each other. They may each protect their knowledge, hide their ideas, refuse to help. Now imagine those same people sharing knowledge, challenging one another, and building on each other's discoveries. Which group is more likely to create something extraordinary? The answer is clear. Progress is often built on cooperation, and this is especially important for young people entering a world that can sometimes feel brutally competitive. Yes, you will compete. You will apply for jobs against other people. You will compete for customers. You will compete for opportunities. Competition is part of life, but competition doesn't mean the world has to become your enemy. You can compete and still respect others. You can want to succeed and still celebrate somebody else's success. You can build something for yourself while also creating value for other people. In fact, the strongest businesses often do exactly that. They succeed because they solve problems. The more useful the solution, the more value they can create. And that brings us back to the beginning. Usefulness. It keeps coming back because maybe the greatest question is not, how can I get as much as possible? Maybe it's, what can I give? What can I build? What can I improve? What problem can I solve? And the answer to that question may become clearer as you learn more about the world. So read broadly. Talk to people from different industries. Ask them what they do. Ask them what problems they face. Ask what they wish could be improved. Explore unfamiliar subjects. Don't be embarrassed to know nothing at the beginning. Everyone starts there. The person who is willing to say, I don't know, but I want to learn, has already taken a powerful first step. And there is something else young people need to understand. Learning is not limited to classrooms. A university can be valuable. A great teacher can change your life, but education is much larger than a building. You can learn through books, through work, through conversation. Through building things, through failing. Through traveling, through observing how different people live, through joining people who are already doing work that interests you. Sometimes the fastest way to understand a field is to get close to it. If you're interested in filmmaking, spend time around people making films. If you're interested in engineering, find people building things. If you're interested in business, watch how businesses actually operate. The real world has a way of teaching lessons that theory alone cannot. And sometimes, what you learn is that your dream wasn't what you thought it would be. That's useful information. Discovering what you don't want is part of discovering what you do want. But there is one final challenge. What happens when you have explored? What happens when you have read the books, learned the skills, found something you're interested in, and then reality hits? Because sooner or later, it will. The project fails. The application gets rejected. The business loses money. The exam doesn't go well. The people around you start doubting you. And suddenly, all the beautiful advice in the world faces its greatest test. What do you do when trying to be useful isn't easy? What do you do when the thing you care about begins to hurt? What do you do when the world tells you that perhaps you should just give up? That is where ambition meets reality. And that is where the next lesson begins. Because having a dream is one thing, building it when everything goes wrong is something else entirely.